Yeah, I've been doing photography for maybe 10 years, and knew when I went vegan that I wanted to use my knowledge or skills to help animals somehow. So I started doing that, I guess. Yeah, you might be thinking, well, taking pictures of animals, how hard can it be? You just need a camera and an animal, and then you're basically all set. Well, I mean, you can take pictures of the cats or dogs that you live with. Maybe some of you even have used your phones to take pictures of some exploited animals, maybe slaughterhouse trucks at a parking lot or whatever. I want to try and spend the next 30 or 40 minutes or so going into how we can use photography to tell stories of these animals that are all around us but that we don't really see, and tell these stories that would otherwise go untold. Yeah, we'll start by looking at a bit of visual storytelling. How do we actually use photography to tell stories? What is animal photojournalism even? And what would be an interesting story to tell, and how do we find them? And some different perspectives maybe that would be relevant for the movement to start telling. Then I'll quickly go through some, I'll do the quickest camera course in the history of camera courses. I'll, depending on the time, maybe skip lightly over the basic camera controls. I think that's probably the most boring part for you. Otherwise composition, super important, and editing, and sorting your pictures, which is very often overlooked. You've got to do that, so we're going to talk about it. And then I'll try and I've got a little example of a storyboard or whatever you would call it, and how you can sort of narrate a story through photography. Just a quick warning, I will be showing some pictures that are not so nice to look at. I'll try to give a warning beforehand if I think it's triggering enough. But I do implore you to not look away, because I think it's important that we remind ourselves of who it is we're fighting for and why we're fighting for them. And I think the least we can do for the animals is bear witness to their lives and the experiences that they have. If we aren't going to do it, then who's going to do it? So if it's even if it's uncomfortable, then try to look. Yeah. I just want to start out by maybe going into why we should use photography as a tool. I think we all agree that video documentation is one of the most important tools that we have as a movement. It's great for like objectively exposing the realities of animal exploitation, and it can give people this rare insight into these secretive industries that they otherwise wouldn't see. Video sort of captures this unfolding sequence of events, while photography is a snapshot of just a single moment frozen in time. So it's much more limited in the amount of information it can convey, both spatially and temporal, time-wise, and also auditory. So you might be thinking, well, what's the point? You know, we can put much more information out into the world with video, so why should we bother with photography? And I've tried to do a little comparison. This is a clip from the documentary Dominion. It's just of Pharaoh and Crates, where you can see, you know, you're able to really showcase how these animals are kept. You see their movements. You know, if there was sound on, you'd be able to hear them. You're able to narrate it and tell much more. Whereas a photograph like this is just a single moment of a mother pig with her babies, and you're not getting all the spatial information, but what I think photography is really good at is letting the viewer connect with the animal much more deeply than a video is able to. I think rarely videos will focus on an individual for more than a few seconds, at most up to a couple of minutes if it's specifically about this individual. And there's always an end, you know, the video will end after a certain amount of time, but you've got unlimited time to look at a picture like this. And it's much more open to interpretation. So you might look at a picture like this and ask questions like, well, what is she thinking and what is she feeling? How many times has she been here before? And is she worried for her babies? Does she know that they're going to be taken away from her? I think the ability to let people connect with animals and to, in general, photography, to tell stories from around the world that people would otherwise not see and connect with causes that they wouldn't be exposed to is a really powerful thing. And photojournalism is the sort of main tool for doing that. Photojournalism originated through war photography, and the sort of the main goal of photojournalism is to convey stories truthfully through images. So instead of normal journalism where you write a story, you show what's happening, which is much more immersive and connected for the audience. Now anyone could take pictures, but not all pictures are stories or tell a story, and not all, even if they're telling a story, they're not always truthful. So, take this picture of my child, for example. There's no story to be told, I just thought she looked cute. So it's a very truthful photo, I suppose, but there's no story. Whereas this picture from Arla's website is clearly trying to tell a story, but it's a really untruthful story. And just, fuck Arla. Yeah, so animal photojournalism is this mixture of wildlife conservation photography and conflict photography. With wildlife conservation photography, you're focusing on animals that are typically endangered or otherwise impacted by humans. And conflict photography, also war photography, is telling the atrocities of what we do to each other. Yeah, and also sort of documenting these the brutality and violences that economic forces and political forces attempt to hide from the public. That's conflict photography also. So when you put those two together, and this next image might be a little bit not nice to look at, you get animal photojournalism. And I mean, you look at a picture like this and you think, do you even need to see the act itself? It's just knowing beforehand what's going to happen to them is enough to invoke a strong, you get your stomach hurts a little bit. It's not nice to look at. But this is, we have to tell these stories, because if no one's doing this, then no one's going to know that this is what we're doing to animals. People have to know this shit. Yeah, we fail to see these literally billions of animals that are living around us, and the aim of animal photojournalism is to capture their lives and experiences and expose them to the public, so that these stories can be told and people can connect with them. And we can finally see these invisible animals that are all around us but don't get seen. Yeah, how do we find stories to tell? Unfortunately, we do so much shit to animals and we do it everywhere, so it's not really hard to find stories. They're everywhere, because animals are everywhere, you just have to look. So one of the stories that we often focus on in the movement is, or the stories that we do focus on is those of like industrial farms. And I think we do that because there's a lot of them and they house a lot of animals or enslave a lot of animals. And it's something everyone in the world engages with somehow. And it's an important story to be told. But there are also many other stories to be told, like we talked about yesterday, the pet shops, and racing, entertainment, zoos, circuses, using animals for work, for religious sacrifices or whatnot. I mean, there is not a thing in the world where you could come up with anything and we would use animals for it, you know. Yeah, so if you would like to start out taking pictures of animals in farms, a really good place to do it is a thing like Open Landbrug, or in English you would call it Open Agriculture, which is this yearly event in Denmark where lots of different farms will open up to the public and, you know, let people in and see how their food is made and how well the animals are kept and all of that. Or, you know, as we might see it, you know, indoctrinate your children into carnism. It's legal, it's free, it's safe. I would say, you know, you're not gonna get chased out. There's, you know, you're allowed to be there, so no one's gonna look at you twice for taking pictures. And it's because you have the time to just be with the animals and don't have to worry about if you're going to get caught in a second. It's a good place to practice because you could spend several hours there taking pictures of them instead of maybe 10 minutes, because in a second someone's going to come and see you and you're going to have to run. If anyone's interested, this year it's on the 15th of September, and on this link down here you can find all the places that are open to the public. There are places where you can just walk around and other places you'll get to go on a little tour of animal abuse. So that's super fun. It's also a great place to sort of capture the way we interact with animals, the way we view them, diminish them, dominate them. Here we have a human showing her little child, the forcibly orphaned calves. So that's a fun contrast. Yeah, and some other places that would be sort of legal or free to access and low risk would be pet shops, for example. And I'm also thinking maybe riding schools. You know, you can also exploit animals there. And you know, obviously you can say fuck it to the legal part and do whatever you want, because their shit should be illegal, and showing what's happening to them should not be illegal, so, you know. Yeah, let me just see. This next picture is going to be also not nice to look at. Yeah, the same guy, he does some really crazy pictures from around the world. I think we should ask ourselves which stories we should tell and how we should tell them, because we often tend to focus on these extremely brutal and violent images, and I think they're important because they're shocking and, you know, they do make many people think about what the fuck is going on. And I think sometimes we maybe feel like we have to show this kind of imagery for people to take it serious, what's happening to animals. But I think we might be missing the mark in several ways by doing this and focusing mainly on these images, because for several reasons, and I'll go through them. Firstly, I think a lot of us are increasingly desensitized to violent imagery through social media, especially maybe the younger generation who have grown up with unhindered access to the internet. So this sort of footage might just sort of blend into the other mass of violent footage that you see on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. On the other hand, some people might be so extremely put off by this imagery that they just scroll by. They can't look at it, and then they don't get a chance whatsoever to connect with these animals and see what we're doing to them. So we're missing people on sort of two sides of the spectrum. And I think a way we can maybe counteract some of this is by starting to tell more stories of the more baseline everyday suffering that happens in animal exploitation. That's inherent to the industries of any kind. The suffering that happens because we, you know, confine them, and from being bored and unable to run free and do what they please, from being unable to build a nest for their babies, or from being separated from their families or moved around constantly. The thing is, people will oftentimes not recognize this as suffering, and it makes sense when you think about the fact that we've all been indoctrinated from we were children to believe that farmed animals are happy animals, and that pets are these disposable commodities that we can just replace by going to a pet store, and that animals that are imprisoned in zoos are happy to live their lives like that for the sake of human entertainment. We're told all these things, and that's how we grow up, and we, you know, maybe we go to like Copenhagen as a child, and we get told by the animal abusers that call themselves farmers that, oh no, this is what happy pigs look like, and this is just how pigs naturally act. And how are you supposed to know any better if that's all you're ever told and all you ever see? So I think in order for this to work, for us to tell the stories of this baseline everyday suffering, and for people to recognize that this is not what happy pigs and relaxed pigs, that's not what they look like, but rather this is what they look like, we have to tell these stories also of animals that have been liberated, or of free animals. This is not what happy, free birds look like. This is what a happy and free bird looks like. We have to tell these stories for people to recognize that what we're doing to animals, and, you know, the looks in their eyes and biting at cages or scratching at walls isn't just, you know, silly animal behavior because they're stupid or whatever. It's because they're frustrated and they're living in a hell. Yeah, I think this is a really important perspective that we need to tell more. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the boring stuff. So we all have a phone, and a phone is great, but you just saw this picture here before. I'm just going to go back. This is awful quality. You can use your phone for a lot. It's great if, you know, you come by something on the run, or if you're out and about and you see something and you don't necessarily have a camera. And I know a lot of people don't necessarily have a big camera. They're expensive. I don't expect people to just go buy them. But they're really good for getting good quality images, and for, you get a lens also, so you can zoom in and out. So it just really gives you a lot more versatility and quality. So if you want to do stuff like this and take it seriously, I really highly recommend that you get a DSLR camera, or a mirrorless would maybe be better, because that's where cameras are moving towards. A lens, obviously, SD cards, because you want to, save the pictures, and extra batteries, because there's nothing worse than going out to take pictures and then your camera dies. Especially if you've put the effort into going out to somewhere where you might not be welcome, you want to make sure that you've got the stuff that you need. And that is also some of the stuff over here that's nice to have depending on the situation. Sometimes you might be working in dark situations for whatever reason, so a headlamp can be nice, or an external light. I think we should refrain from using flash, because it can startle and frighten animals, and it's also a lot less easy to control. And a cloth to wipe your lens, because oftentimes it's disgusting in these places, and it's dusty and damp, and you're going to get shit pictures if you can't wipe your lens. And then what's the point if you can't even see what's on the picture? For lenses, this is, I apologize beforehand, now, ignore the scary looking mass. What I want to say with this is, just quickly, get small lenses, because they give you a much bigger field of view. They have this is in the camera, this is in the lens. The shorter this distance is, the bigger your field of view is. And then you can get much more, surroundings and environment, and which is really good for storytelling. This is more, for bird photography in the wild, where you can't get very close to animals. I'll skip past this, but if anyone wants it and anyone wants to talk about it, you're welcome. This is just basic stuff for exposing a picture with the light. This is, if you get a camera, you have to know this stuff. A slightly more interesting part of the practical aspects of photography, and maybe one of the most important aspects when it comes to storytelling, is how we compose the pictures. And I think the best piece of advice I can give you is to get low and to get close to the animals. We often tend to take pictures, with our phones, and we take them from up here, looking down. And it's this human perspective that everyone's used to seeing. It's just this is how we see the world. But it's not telling a story, and it's, how are you going to connect with the animal? People, that's how they view them to begin with. They never get down to this level to look them in the eyes. If you really want to tell their stories and to sort of convey their experience, you have to get down to their level. And getting close to them also is a good idea. Another thing, I've got a few examples of this, is to use your foreground and the surroundings to sort of frame the subject, lead the eye towards them. Here the wire sort of works in that way. In this picture, I've sort of, I feel like the building sort of leads your eyes to the cows, and also, in using this and including the building, it sort of tells a wider story about where these animals live and what we think of them. This is, would you want to live there? But we subject them to live there, and I can tell you that it wasn't much nicer inside. Here's a mother cow with her calf in a filthy barn. I've used the sort of surroundings to frame her. She's stuck in there. That's that. Another thing is to sort of get a little creative, maybe. Try and get different angles by getting up really high or low. This is from some sort of walk bridge above where the cows were eating or whatever. Yeah, this is super important. And I just maybe would like to emphasize to practice it, because you're gonna take shit pictures. It's gonna happen, but if you don't experiment with your composition and try new things out, you're never gonna know what's gonna work out. So, you might think, oh, this is a bit silly, but it might work out in the end. Now, this is a big issue for me. I often get told, can't you just send me your pictures? You don't need to edit them before you send them or whatever. Or don't delete any of your pictures because they're all really important. They're really not. They're really not. Like, not every moment is super important. Is this an important moment? It's, we're seeing birds in a cage, and that's great. Or it's not, but, it's out of focus. There's no obvious subject. What's the point, really? Is this an important moment? Yes, but it's a shit picture. So, you would delete these pictures, and then you would maybe keep something like this. It's similar to the last image, but it's in focus. You can see this net that he's got. It's giving a lot more to the story. So please sort your pictures. It also is, I think it's what makes photography a strong medium to use, because compared to video, where we're using just the whole, whatever's happening, with photography we're choosing the most important moments and giving those to the audience. We're telling the key moments of the story, so they don't have to look for them. And for editing, I often get told, oh, it's not necessary, no one's going to notice. Is this picture usable? If you took this picture, would you think, oh, yeah, I'm going to put this up online and people are going to go vegan? Only if you edit it. Yeah, so this is a really, really powerful way of salvaging images, and also, if you didn't get your composition right, you can't save it completely post-editing, but you can do a little bit, and yeah, fix the lighting, for example, so you can actually see what's happening. And this sort of leads me into, this image here leads me into an example of a story you could tell through images. You could, sometimes one picture is enough to tell a story, but oftentimes you might want to use several pictures to give a broader story. Open Landbrug last year, where a mother cow had just given birth to this baby. And it's not nice knowing what's going to happen to them in less than 24 hours. They're going to get taken away and they're never going to see each other again. And in a way you might think, well, maybe this could be a standalone image or whatever, because the foreshadowing of it, or like what we know and they don't, brings another layer to the image. Then after separation, this is what we give to them. And while I was standing here taking these pictures, I heard a kid ask their mum why the calves were drinking milk. And the mum said, oh, I don't know, maybe they like it. Maybe it's because it's fucking meant for them, I don't know. Yeah. These are some of the sick, slightly older calves in this just really weird, dirty shed that wasn't labelled or anything. Everything else was labelled as like, oh, this is the kindergarten, this is the preschool, this is, trying to make it look nice and whatnot and presentable and make the kids relate to the animals, because, human kids also get stolen from their parents at birth or something. Here we have 2 other cows with very full udders. When you leave the place, you can get some free samples of all the stolen breast milk. You know, go and look at the abuse and then sample it. Yeah, this is also from that place, from the sick shed or whatever you would call it. So clearly, open agriculture or open landbrug is only open for humans. It's not, you know, oh, we're opening the gates for the animals, unfortunately. It's very much closed for them. Yeah, and I think I'll sort of wrap it up with some thoughts on getting into this. It's not for everyone. I think I can stomach a lot, at least for now. At some point I might not be able to stomach a lot, but if you do this sort of stuff, it's important to listen to yourself, you know, physically and mentally. Are you feeling okay to do this? Because seeing these sort of things will impact you. You know, oftentimes you'll go to places and see stuff and you sort of just go into this work mode and you come out of there and you think, oh my God, am I a psychopath? I didn't feel anything. But like at this place, for example, where I had the time to just sit with the calves, I started getting really emotional because I had the time to allow myself to like be with them and connect with them in a different way, because when you're going into a situation where you might not be welcome, you know, you're just like, okay, I just gotta get the shit I need, and then out again. It almost feels like you're ignoring the animals. You know, it feels like you're maybe not doing enough for them, but I think it's an important thing to do. We need to tell these stories, even if it's hard, but obviously don't push yourself to the point where you can't take it anymore, because we need everyone to be able to do as much as they can for as long as they can. Yeah, and also the safety of it. It can be unsafe situations, so that's something to consider. But yeah, I think I'll wrap it up at that.